Hi friends, Jessica Stollings-Holder here, and it is so great to be with you today. Hey, I'm a speaker and author who helps leaders bridge and benefit from generational gaps in the workplace. About a year and a half ago, I was doing some research in preparation for my book, Regenerate, and really beginning to hone in on Gen Z, also known as iGen. These are the 8 to 23-year-olds in our society today. And I came across a lot of data that was really troubling to me, and it was regarding the mental wellness of the next generation. What the research showed that was for the first time in decades, we're seeing things like depression, loneliness, anxiety, and unfortunately, suicide on the rise. At the very same time, life satisfaction rates are on the decline. Now, this data, and as I dug into the research, I really felt a tug on my heart to explore, why is this happening? So I launched a series of discussions with my friends in Gen Z. I started talking to companies, my friends in the government, in the education sector, to better understand why this is happening. Along those discussions, a lot of things became clear, and we're going to share some of those things I learned today. But what I began to struggle with is, okay, there's a challenge. We get maybe why it's happening. But what on earth do we do about it? How can we help in practical ways? Well, I had such a great day last spring when a good friend of mine, Rocky Buckley, a friend of mine from a mastermind group, said, you have got to meet my friends Kris and Kristin. And I tell you, they have got a great company that they're going to tell you about. And they really help empower employees to bring out their best self in terms of mindset. So I'd love for you to meet my friends Kris and Kristin. Hey, well, say hi and please tell us about yourselves and your business.
Hello, I am Kris Nurse. And so I am a part of a company called Mental Wellness Unleashed. And what we do is we work with companies and organizations, and we bring in tools and techniques to help build a framework around a mentally healthy workforce, right? So our goal is really getting in there and helping organizations impact what we call their people metrics, and that's the metrics around retention, attraction, and productivity. But we do that in a way of bringing in the right trainings and the right programs to really increase and support the mental health of the workforce.
Hi, and I'm Kristin Durney, and thanks, Kris, for that great intro. So basically what we talk about is based off cognitive behavioral therapy techniques. These tools and techniques are basically a unique way of looking at personal development. And being an HR executive and having mental health conditions myself, I approve of the concept that these tools and techniques are not only extremely effective, but they changed and transformed my life. So these tools and techniques are amazing tools for not only people with mental health conditions, but people that don't have mental health conditions as well, like Kris. And throughout the series, Kris is going to be showing us, showing you how she's been leveraging these tools as well.
Yeah, so I tell you, when we met, it was like we've been our whole lives, like we've known each other and really united on this concept of mindset and growth mindset particularly, and how this can really equip the next generation and their support communities, the workplace, our schools, parenting, our houses of worship, equip the next generation for success. And so today, as we launch this series, we just invite you to be a fly on the wall of our conversations as we share what we're learning together. We wanted to start out by stewarding this conversation and wisely and well. If you get on social media or you on the radio, you hear about generations in the workplace, and a lot of it gets kind of taken out of concept. And so we want to make sure that we are very clear about what we mean about this topic. So when we talk about generations in our conversation, we're going to be talking about the social and cultural influences that impact a group of people as they're coming of age. So this is similar to, but a little different than life stage, which ebbs and flows and shifts and changes as we go throughout our different decades of life. So for example, if I'm a parent of a teen, I'm probably going to have a different perspective than when I'm a teen, right, friends?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's hope
100%.
so. Freaky Friday. Those social and cultural influences is that they're enduring. And that's why they're so important to understand. So for example, someone who grew up in the Great Depression time period, where slogans like waste not,
want not,
save for a
Rainy day.
Oh yeah, right. When those slogans were the norm, it's no wonder that later in life we see still this commitment and value of financial stewardship and pension those pennies and valuing that even in all through the different life cycles and in the workplace. So what the conversation is not about, it's not about stereotyping or saying if you are this generation, you have these 3.5 qualities. Not at all. There's no tool or assessment that we can fully define who we are. Generations is just one among many lenses to consider as we seek to understand, communicate, and connect with one another. Kind of like trees in a forest, and each one is totally different and unique. And they grew up in similar soil with similar exposure to sunlight and rainfall. So we can stand back and pull away some big ideas about those trees. And so that's what Kris and Kristin and I are going to do today as we talk about Generation Z. Now, this is a huge topic because we're going through one of the greatest generational shifts in history. And right now we have up to 5 generations in the workplace. When we study generations, we look back to lead forward. So we look at what was happening in the world when they were growing up, and how those attitudes, values, and perspectives influence their expectations and styles when they enter the workforce. It makes a ton of sense. It would explain why traditionalists often communicate based on the military chain of command. Now, this is what we're going to do, not do it, because over half of all the men in the traditionalist generation were veterans, very naturally. It would make sense why our boomer friends often link sacrifice with success. With 80 million peers, they had to work hard and prove themselves to get the job. And so sometimes there's a value to come early and stay late. It begins to make a lot of sense why our Gen X friends are skeptical and ask a lot of questions. As they were coming of age, they saw a lot of things fail. Scandals in the government, marriages crumbling, layoffs of the 80s, even Halloween, razors showing up in Halloween candy. So they're going to come in with a little bit of a question asking, can I trust you? When we start to look through a generational lens, we understand why millennials are so team-oriented. When they grew up in the classroom, they never did a presentation alone. They grew up in the self-esteem movement and the you are special, and they did things together. They're very purpose-filled, and this makes complete sense. Now that brings us into Gen Z, who is rising right now. So we want to think about, and the question I would ask us is, hey, what are some of the things that are happening in the world, let's say the past 5 to 10 years, that may be impacting this generation? Kris, Kristin, friends, what are some of those influences, do you think?
So I would say first top of mind is social media and the boom of that and the accessibility to, everything that's going on in our life very instantaneously. That I've seen as a big impact and a big change.
Yeah, and to add to that too, unfortunately it's promoting a lot of isolation with social media. So that we've of course, I know that all 3 of us have read articles around isolation. We've experienced the conversations around isolation, and that human connection, that human contact is so essential. And because of the social media, that human connection has really been lacking a bit. And so really trying to get back into how do we connect again as humans, and how important that is to keep from feeling isolated and lonely, and really have that support system and those accountability partners, and having a crew, as we call it.
Oh, absolutely. You all, hit the nail on the head. I think one of the most defining moments or impact areas would be technology. Gen Z is the first generation of what's called digital natives. This simply means they grew up with this phone here attached to their hips since they were newborns. I think they come out of the womb knowing how to tap an app and have a non-GMO Panera sandwich droned to their door, right? So it's a very different way of consuming media and interacting with one another. Being on their phone, on Snapchat, making TikTok videos, FaceTiming one another. It is not a distinct object for them. This is an extension of who they are and how they communicate. The beauty of technology is it's going to empower the next generation, I believe, to bring tremendous opportunity for innovation, connective, really progressing great causes forward. Now, the downside, as you all mentioned, anything overdone, right? Any strength overdone can become a weakness. Unfortunately, what we're seeing with Gen Z is with the connection to technology, we're seeing a lack of ability to communicate, hashtag IRL, in real life. We're seeing a decline in emotional intelligence, the ability to kind of read others and understand self and others. And as you can imagine, when you start to be on social media all the time, you may think you just had a good little family vacation, but then you see your friends went somewhere better, or maybe you see you weren't invited to a party. So everything is online. So that's a major trend we're seeing with Gen Z. Another one, particularly as it has to do with mental health, is that these are the Great Recession kids. So for Gen Z, they didn't grow up like the older millennials in the McMansion era. They saw a lot of things crumble when the 2008 recession happened. Their parents, Gen Z, if you recall, a little bit skeptical, a group who's open to alternative paths, got hit the hardest. And so we see that impacting Gen Z's views in terms of safety and security, and they really value those things. And so we see that Gen Z, for example, leaving their rooms less than previous generations. They're not as stoked to get a driver's license. We're seeing binge drinking on the decline, unplanned pregnancies on the decline. So a lot of good things, but this play on safety and being in really safe environments is obviously impacting some of their mental wellness as well. Finally, we can't ignore this global pandemic that is happening right now with Corona. This is not just something that's impacting all of us. This is a very formative moment for Gen Z. And so it's going to remain to be seen on how this impacts the mental wellness of Gen Z, but it certainly will be a defining moment for this generation. So ladies, what did we miss? What do you think else that we need to know as we launch this conversation together?
Yeah, I think, Jessica, I think one of the things, and like when we're talking about the mental health of the generation, one of the things that we're seeing a lot of statistics around and a lot of growing challenges within the workforce is that Generation Z right now is the most depressed generation that we're dealing with as a it's not even as a country, in the world. And how in the workplace can we support this increase of depression? And a lot of what you just said, a lot of the reasons why that this generation is feeling and living in a more depressed state, and what can we be doing to support that, not only as leaders but as parents, as colleagues, as friends, and they're wanting to talk about it a lot more, which is a positive, which we don't see with a lot of the older generations. So that is the good thing about that. But then what do we do when they do want to talk about it and we're not ready, right? That's where a lot of the older generation doesn't know how to approach it, and it's not because they don't want to, they just don't know how. So that's a big challenge today.
Yeah, and I think what's exciting about this series, Jessica, as we're talking through this, is that the fact that we're going to be promoting tools and techniques that we can give Generation Zs and other generations and parents and leaders to coach to, including things such as empathetic thinking and some other tools that we can actually put to practice where we'll be able to help with mental health conditions. As I said before, proof of concept that these absolutely truly work. So we're so excited to share these tools and techniques. And give everyone the opportunity to utilize them in a way to help with mental health conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure. We want to bring our very best together to see how, if we're going to give the next generation any gift, what if we were to give them the gift of a very strong mindset? So we'll be back with you next week. How we'll move forward is just to really start going into the tools and solution sets. We're going to use real life client scenarios to kind of show some of how this is playing out in the workplace. And then Kris and Kristin are going to shine as they teach us some tools to coach through it successfully. So thank you so much for being a part of this with us today. And we look forward to seeing you next week. See you, friends.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Thanks.